Hi guys, I'm back again. I'm here now to talk to you about the second criteria for your research investigation, which is analysis and interpretation. Okay, and this is all about what you do with your data once you've found it. Now, obviously we want everybody to get up here and get a 6, which means all your ticks are in this top box. If you get one, even just one tick in this second box, then the maximum that we can give you is a 5. Okay, and if you get more than 2 ticks in this box, then the maximum you can get is a 4. Okay, please remember, we don't want anyone down in this bottom section. Ideally, we want everyone up in this top box. So we don't want anything insufficient, incorrect, or irrelevant. I think we're all better than that. We can all avoid that bottom box. So these criteria are split into 2 specific dot points, but within the first dot point, there's 3 things we're looking for. Okay, systematic and effective analysis of the qualitative data and or quantitative data. Remember I said earlier, quantitative data is better. You can use qualitative data, okay, that is acceptable, but it's much harder to be thorough in the analysis of qualitative data. Quantitative data makes it easier for you to write your analysis, so I would really strongly suggest you try to find quantitative data. All right, it says within the sources about, again, this bit will change. The properties and structure of organic materials, that will be based on which year level you're in and what topic you're doing right now. What's important are the words that come after demonstrated by. So the first little bit is the identification of sufficient and relevant evidence. Now, in the previous video, we talked about sufficient and relevant sources. This time we're talking about what the actual evidence is in those sources. So what is it that you're using to answer your question? Relevant, obviously, is it specific to the factors or the traits that you've chosen in your research question to investigate? And sufficient, do you have enough to answer all aspects of your research question? So if you were doing, I don't know, let's do with properties of plastics again, and let's say you were looking at tensile strength, melting point, and I don't know, biodegradability, but you only presented data on biodegradability and melting point, then you haven't presented sufficient evidence because you haven't addressed all aspects of your research question. Okay. The second one, thorough identification of relevant trends, patterns, and relationships. That same statement is in the student experiment, ISMG. Okay, so going through each individual data, and I would strongly suggest that you separate your assignment into sections about each data. So address everything about one data set first, then move on to the next data set, then go on to the next data set. That'll make it easier for you to see that you've done what needs to be done. So looking for trends, patterns, and relationships in each data set, and then thorough and appropriate identification of limitations of evidence. Now, in the student experiment, it talks about limitations and uncertainty. In this one, we can't talk about uncertainty because we don't have generally the experimental methods that we use to collect the data. So it's just about limitations, okay? And that might be something like if you were looking at tensile strength, but you were only given the information at specific temperatures or under specific conditions. And so it was hard then to extrapolate or expand that information to say that it's true all the time. So what's missing from the data that you would need to better answer your research question? That's what you're looking for limitations. And I would suggest you don't have a limitations section at the end, like I said. Do trends, patterns, and relationships and limitations for each data set as you go. That way you make sure you haven't forgotten to do one. Okay, so that's 3 of the 4 points we're looking for. The last one, insightful interpretation of research evidence about the content demonstrated by justified scientific arguments. So it's not enough to just say this is the pattern and this is the limitations. You then need to link it back and say, okay, well, what does this prove? How is this helping me answer my research question? How does it link to the chemical concepts that I'm trying to investigate? Okay, if you do those 3 or 4 things, then you should have met all of the top dot points for this criteria. Goodbye.